Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic. Today we have another exciting Sigenergy installation. This one is a little bit different to what we've shared on the channel before because there is no gateway. We are still integrating this alongside an existing feed-in tariff solar system. It's been in place for around 13-14 years, I believe, and the customer wants to integrate some battery storage to that to even better benefit from all of that sunshine. We're going to show you how we do that and integrate the data that's provided from the existing solar system into the Sigenergy app so you can monitor what's going on. That's a useful feature for consumers who are generally working off a generation meter for older systems. And we will also be showing how the Sigenergy system can safely store up that sunshine for you to use later on in the day without affecting your feed-in tariff payments. Just to say at the start of this video, if you are a consumer who's looking for solar PV and battery storage on your home fresh out the box, please do get in touch with us. There's a link in the description alongside this video. Or if you like this customer who's got some solar PV or battery storage and you want to grow that, change it, make it better, improve it, and work with what you've got in your best case point of use. So we're not going to just change things willy-nilly for the sake of it. Get in touch with us as well. This customer came to us in a similar circumstance, just wanting to get a bit better use from their system than they currently were able. And we've tried again as normal to best advise them, which is one of the reasons we don't have a gateway on this system. The customer wasn't bothered about whole home backup. They didn't have plans to integrate a heat pump. They're worried about the space it might take up and obviously the cost of buying and installing it, which is why we've approached this one slightly differently. So without further ado, at the start of the video, we're going to get on with it and see exactly what this is all about. So you can see we've got a few systems here waiting to go out on jobs. This is the Sigenergy kit we're installing today. So we've got two of the 8 kilowatt hour battery modules, we've got a floor stand, and we've got a 6 kilowatt inverter. We don't have a gateway, and I don't think we've shown that on the channel before, so I thought we'd have a little deep dive on it, both through the install, but also before we get there. We've done a bit of prep on this. You can see we've got a little consumer unit here and some other bits and pieces that are going in alongside this. And we've pre-made some of the leads and bits and pieces that we're going to need to make this work. So this particular system is going alongside a FIT solar system. For those of you who don't know, that's a feed-in tariff system. It's about 13 years old. It's quite difficult to get permission from the FIT owners to swap the inverters, change lots of that. So it's often easier to retain the existing setup that you've got and blend that in with what is essentially an AC coupled battery storage system. Now we can also, if we want in the future, if we get approval from the DNOs, connect more solar PV into this inverter. We'll cover a bit of that in the channel. For those of you who have seen before, when we use a gateway, it's quite a simple integration of existing solar PV. We can use the smart port, all the CTs we need are in the gateway, and the monitoring is done internal with the system. We've printed out some of the instructions, so I'll show you a bit of that in a minute. But we have got this Proteus consumer unit here. This is the old school version. There is some new options on this out on the market now. And if you want to see a video on those, dig back in the channel 3 or 4 ago and we go into the new consumer unit. However, this is some stock we've got to use up. And we've got some meters in here, which is a bit different to what you might normally see in your consumer units, and an SPD and some final circuits. Now we are bringing a sub-main down to this consumer unit, which is going to live in a location close by to the Sigenergy store system. The reason we're doing that is the existing consumer unit within the house is already pretty full. There's one spare way. It's on show in the kitchen. The customer doesn't want to change it because of the unnecessary cost. It's perfectly safe and functioning. And they don't want another board next to it because it already looks as out of place as you can imagine anyway without making it worse. So we're going to move this to the location of the Sigenergy store system. We're going to take a sub-main down to power this board, which is going to provide us the power for the meters. So you can see we've got a B6 breaker in here which is going to power these meters. And then we've got our final circuit for the Sigenergy system. Now, as part of that, because we're not using a gateway, again, the customer didn't want that. They didn't have the requirement for it in terms of going off-grid. They didn't want to spend the money on it. And there wasn't a lot of space to site it. So in this case, we're not using it. Everyone has their own tastes and wants. So because this is living close by to the Sigenergy system, we need to use what I term the big plug on the stack. Now, this is used basically to connect these two meters into the Sigenergy ecosystem and provide insight as to what's going on at both the grid and solar inputs. Now, I'd made the mistake in this lead being made up of doing it with roughly 20 meters of cable on it, so it would be long enough to reach the existing consumer units. However, it only needs to come back to these 2 meters. So basically, these 2 meters have RS485 comms ports on them. We need to take a pair of wires to each meter, which will basically allow that to then talk to the Sigenergy system. This set of instructions explains it way better, and I will link to the PDF file in the description alongside this video for any installers or consumers out there who are interested in it. The basic principle is shown in this diagram. So you've got your Sigenergy going off through into the wider system. There is a CT that monitors the existing solar. So you can see that there. We've got third-party inverters. It's showing 2 there. We've only got 1. And the CT measures the export basically that system's producing and sends that data back to the Sigenergy stack. We've also got sensor 2 over here, which is basically doing the same but for the grid, looking for import and export. And you can see that explained here. So sensor 1 is basically your solar and sensor 2 is your grid. When we come over to the pinouts, you can see here that basically we're looking at pins 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. And they're giving the A and B comms on the RS485 over to those 2 sensors. You see it shows you the plug there, the pins, and we've got some of our own notes there as well that help us set that up. And if you're using the gateway, as you will have seen in some prior content, you don't need to worry about any of that because the gateway does the CT monitoring internal and of itself. Point of note, if you're connecting your third-party inverters in, if you use your smart port, then the system third-party inverter will stay running when you go off-grid. If you just use the backup ports, so where the consumer units connect, it won't. I think it does a frequency shift just to take it out of system. The reason for that is if your batteries are full and your house load consumption is below the third-party solar PV generation, it can rise the voltage internal to the install. So I think it frequency shifts it to get rid of it out of the system, so it knows that's not going to happen. With the smart port, it has control because when the batteries are full and it sees the voltage rising, it can throw the contactor out, take it out of circuit until such time as the battery levels have dropped enough to bring it back in. So it's an easier way for the system to control it, is my understanding. With your CTs, that serves a couple of purposes. You could just use the grid CT, and we have done this before when there has been existing solar that the customer hasn't want to show within the app, and it will just see that export. So it sees the export, doesn't really know what it is, but the inverter will store that power up into the batteries. So you can do that. It's just in your nice Sigenergy app. It won't show it as solar generation. Using the second CT, which basically goes back via a cable to the existing consumer unit to be clamped around the third-party solar inverter's circuit, it will then show it within the Sigenergy app as generation. So if you've got an old fit system, that is really useful because often the only form of insight you have is the generation meter. You can now see in an app what your solar system has been doing in terms of its PV production. It won't show you what each individual string's been doing if you've got more than one. It won't show you any of the wider DC voltages and all that stuff that inverters can give you, but it will show you the production, basically what it's outputted in terms of its power. That is really useful to log in the app, see what's going on, and understand if your system's performing as you would expect it to. So that's a useful function that you can tie in. It's not actually that difficult. It maybe sounds more complicated than it is. We'll show it out on site when we've got it all together. And really, it's just so the customer can see what their system's doing in the wider context of the system and store up that energy that they would normally just be exporting to use later on. So you still get all of your normal feed-in tariff payments. You can still use the energy as you would normally do, but rather than it just being exported to the grid when you've been paid for producing it anyway, you can store it up in your batteries and basically double your bubble. And it's all perfectly legitimate on that basis. The other lead we've got made up here is just the power supply one. If you've watched the prior content before, you'll know we generally have bigger cables than this. Of the 10 to 12 kilowatt variety, this is just a 6mm HO7 because it is just a 6 kilowatt inverter. It's a bit smaller than we normally do, but we do cover all bases. This one's very local to us. It's an interesting area. I'm looking forward to recording it. I might get some of the wider footage of where we are as well, maybe. We've got our usual AC isolators in there, so though the consumer unit's going to be quite close to the Sigenergy store, and you could, in theory, open up the main switch to isolate both line and neutral, it makes more sense to put an easy point of isolation that you can lock off on the system should you need. So we're going to add that in as well. This should only really take us half a day to get in and installed and commissioned and working. It's not a big project, and we will get to it and show you how it all comes together right now. So we've got a little Nipex stripping knife here, and this is a new one into my kit, so I thought I'd show you it on the channel. It is absolutely razor sharp. You can use this to strip different types of cable. There's even a little kind of ratcheting function where you can draw it down the back of a steel wire armor, for example. But in this case, I'm just popping the outer sheath off this EV Ultra, which is the cable we've chosen to bring our supply circuit down here. It's only a short run. We can use it for the CT monitoring and also the main AC supply. You can see with that it comes with a nice little plastic wrapping and then these strings in there, which are really to keep the cores in the correct shape through the length of the cable and make sure they don't get twisted around themselves inside that outer jacket. So we're just going to pop all of those little stringy bits away and off. You can cut them with scissors, or if you're careful with your knife, cut them away so they're nice and neat and not protruding into the gland and the consumer unit and isolators when we put them in there, which is what we're going to do with this one. And of course, as always, we're going to ferrule the world and make sure we get a picture for social media to prove it. We're just dressing this consumer unit away at the minute, and you can see we've got our extension here back to the Sigenergy store. So this is the two inputs for the grid. So this is the grid meter, and that's the solar meter, and they go over into the big plug down here. You can see that into the Sigenergy store to communicate the meter readings through RS485 into the Sigenergy system, so it can see what's going on in terms of the grid and the solar. The CTs extend off the bottom of here. This is obviously isolated. You can see that on there. So we've got the brown again, which we've mapped as our grid cores, and then we've got our solar cores. Now this isn't Belden cable, it's just normal cat cable. We've actually used EV Ultra to come down here. It'll be absolutely fine for these CTs. So you can see we've got our AC isolator here. This is 63 amp. It's well over spec for the rating of the inverter. However, we just use these by standard now. If the system ever gets upgraded, the switchgear can remain the same, or isolators, which is a useful function. Also, it's just a lot more wiring room in them. We don't like the tiny little isolators when there are other options available. So you can see we've got our supply coming in on the top side of this isolator. It's 3-pole. So we've got line in L1 and the neutral in L3, and that's just so both can be switched. And then you can see the same on the bottom. And then these little neutral cage clamps in the back, if you've not used them before on the Proteus range, you've got a cage clamp not just behind the screw head, which is nice. Just to reference back in on the cat cable on the EV Ultra, it's only running, I think it's 6 meters, and we're happy with that. It's screened inside the cable, and I think it'll be absolutely fine for the CT data. We shall see. But Belden wire, your 2-core screen shielded cable, is the one, really, if you're extending CTs over a longer distance, I'd recommend you use. But just for these short little runs, it's absolutely ideal. But don't forget, EV Ultra is not in BS 7671. It is basic approved, so you need to make sure you list that within the deviation sections on your certificates. I just need to tidy this up now. So I'm going to neaten everything up in there, make sure we get a bit of heat shrink over these little bits, and tidy it all up. And there we go. So we're trunking up and through. So we've got our EV Ultra that enters up there. You can see a little mark in the brickwork just behind the trunking. Straight in, drops down into this consumer unit, feeding those circuits. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And then we drop out through this AC isolator to the Sigenergy store. And this is kind of an outhouse, and we're in there. We did want to try and get it in this end space, but it just wasn't quite wide enough with the distances you need for ventilation. So we've popped it here, and now we've got ample space, and we're ready to get that powered up. So you can see now that's the 6 kilowatt on the top, and 2 8 kilowatt hour battery modules. In the side here, we've been going on about all of these, get you into a bit of a better angle. You can see we've got the MPPTs, and on this one there's just 2. They're not used because we're not popping the solar into this. We've got our lighting part, which is this top one up here, and that's taking power into the side panels for these lights. And then we've got our comms ports, so we've got that for Wi-Fi. You can see there's a little dongle there, and then there's a couple for Ethernet on there. Now this one's just going to sit on Wi-Fi because the customer's router's right across the other side of the house. They've got a mesh network, and they're quite happy that is going to be ample for the connectivity. So we're leaving that. Obviously, if it needs it down the road, it can be added. And then we've got our big plug here for the CT comms to those meters, and our AC power that comes into here. Now, we would usually recommend you get your products on a wired internet connection, but in this particular case, it's just such a lot of work to try and get that through, and the power over Ethernet options never really bring any more reliability than just sitting on that Wi-Fi. And we're happy with that in this case. We'll see how it plays out. We've got our power button up there. So now we're just waiting on connecting this up to the consumer unit. I'll get a bit of content on that as well. And then we can get this turned on and commissioned. See how those CTs measure. Just to show you the consumer unit. So you can see here we've got our 2 meters, the solar and the grid. They're all labelled up. Got our main switch, RSPD, the battery, and the meter supply, and then all of our other labelling in place. These cables enter through some fire grommets in the side onto the trunking, which I can't show you because it's tight against the wall. I did get a bit of content putting that together, so hopefully I can show you that as well in the course of the video. And otherwise, that's kind of it in here. I'll show you once we've got it commissioned, and we'll have a look at the CTs and see that they are behaving themselves. But that's it in a nutshell. I'll show you the cable route once we've got that cleated, and the consumer unit when we've powered that up. So apologies if this is a bit windy, I haven't got my muffler on the mic. You see our cable route here, so we're punched out the back of the consumer unit, we're running across the top of this door, and then it punches through into this little outhouse here where the battery's going to live. It's a great home for it, because obviously it's outside the dwelling, it's in a nice dry and relatively consistent in temperature environment. And we've got that, it's a 6mm EV Ultra, and again we've just tried to tie it in as nice as we can across this doorway. With this being a flat roof and the walls all decorated and such, we couldn't route it internally, so we've had to take this option, and I think that was neater than dropping it down going under the door. I always think that looks a bit scruffy, just personal preference, isn't it, at the end of the day, but I think that looks quite nice and neat. We did have a bit of an explosion on the brick, as you can see up there, but we'll repair that as we always do. For those of you who haven't seen on the channel before, and I know Corey OY does this a lot as well, I've seen him doing it, where you break up your bricks, so you get that into a nice fine brick dust, pop it in with your mortar mix, and then you can match it in perfectly with the brick colour. And then you just need to make sure you try and get the ripple effect of the brick as best you can. It is what it is sometimes with these old bricks, they do just pop, and obviously with the consumer unit directly the other side of this wall, it was what it was. We couldn't drill from out to in, so it happens, and we will sort that out. Otherwise, that's us kind of ready to go now in the consumer unit. I will show you a bit of that when we get to it from a zoomed in angle, because it's inside the customer's home. And yeah, that's the circuit down for the Sigenergy store. So it can now store up the solar power from the existing PV system and feed the house with it of an evening. And also, if the customer wants, use those overnight tariffs to charge itself back up and then utilise that through the day. So we'll run through this little brick repair, and this is a hack I was first taught years and years ago by my granddad. And if you ever have a brick pop on you, it's a good way of getting back to a nice finish without having to use some of the ugly Roman nose kind of cover plates. I really don't like those. And just to say, Matty had piloted this hole as well, so he'd gone through with a smaller bit first, and that is the point it decided to pop apart. These are hard old bricks, and yeah, it's just one of those. Any brick can pop. It does it more often than not on new build. If you end up in that position, get yourself some repair cement, mix it in with the brick dust that you've been gathering from kind of your cleating. We use the Bosch hoovered SDS. It collects up all that dust,
Follow the step,
and you can get to the same colour and consistency as the brick you're repairing. Fortunately, I didn't realise recording this that the sun was affecting the footage, but I do go in a bit closer in a minute to show you the end result. As Nathan wanders past here, you can see how we're just blending that in. So we're using the spatula to try and get the same ripple as the brick into the pattern there. You can see it's come up pretty nice. So just like that, the brick's repaired. I'll just show you we did that. We just need to clean that light up a bit underneath it. I was just mixing up a bit of cement repair mortar with some of the brick dust that we've had collected in our Hoover, because we have one of these Bosch Hoovers. I'll get you the cameras come down, bring that up, which collects the dust for us. So that was handy. It's tidy all that up, but that's enabled us to repair that brick. So you would now never know the difference. And again, just popped a bit of repair mortar in under there. Wasn't bothered about a drip loop this side because we're under the soffit and it's very unlikely for moisture to be working its way through and on in that. We've silicone sealed all around it. We've got mortar repair seal. On this one, we've added a bit of a loop as it goes through. Obviously the consumer unit's the other side of that, so we don't want any moisture tracking through the cable into there, and it's just going to run outside now. Again, sealed in the actual brickwork, and then we've got the repair cement on there to thoroughly encase the hole, and any moisture that happens to track along this will drip down off there rather than going into the cavity. So that's that bit covered off, and yeah, that's the cable side. We're just getting juiced up now. I'll show you what we're at the stage of inside. So we've got the 2 meters running now. So you see we've got the solar meter and also the grid meter. These are both monitoring. If you scroll through, you can actually see what's going on in the system. So you can see there at the minute, we've got about 153 watts on the solar. It's got a circuit protection there, meters reading. We drop down into the stack. So you can see there, that's doing its stuff. And in the app, we'll have a better look at this. But we see we've got the solar displaying. We've got the home consumption, we've got what's going into the Sigenergy store, and the grid locked there at 0. And obviously that data now will build up. But that is it, in and of itself. Get you off the floor. All done. So we've got that there, looks good. Let's come up a treat in there, and we'll take the customer through it now and show them what's been going on. So you can see we've got our brick repair done on that. It looks nicely blended in. It's still drying a bit there, but we are what we are, and that cable route is looking good. You can use a Roman nose on those if you want. However, I don't think they look quite as nice. They're a bit big and bulky, and once that's dry, you'll never see it. And you see there's been some cavity wall filling done in here with these little knobs all over the place. So the wall's not in the best condition anyway, and that looks absolutely fine. Nice, easy cable run. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video, taking a look through how you can integrate a feed-in tariff system with battery storage of today. And of course, if the customer wants, subject to regulatory approvals from the DNO, we can add more solar PV on this system as well, which is really nice. So I think now you've got that scope to really consider growing your systems beyond what you might have typically the kind of the 3.6 kilowatt-ish systems that were installed through the course of the feed-in tariff, really just because that's what everybody was having put in. And obviously the technology around solar panels and inverters was very different back then. And there are some things that you can do now to really look towards powering your entire home in ways you couldn't of 10 and 15 years ago. So please do get in touch with us. There's a link in the description alongside this video where you can go off and do so. You may be able to see behind me here, we've got some Sigenergy batteries and inverters down there. And we're going off to add another stack of batteries and another 11 kilowatt 3-phase inverter to a system you may have seen us install on the channel a year or so ago. So we're going to be out doing that soon as well. We've not had a lot of Sigenergy content on the channel of late, primarily because so many of you watching these videos are waiting for that all-in-one 2.0, and you're not wanting to spend your money on something that is soon to be out of date, quite understandably, because I would be of a similar mindset. We do have some installs coming of the new 8 and 10 kilowatt hybrid inverters from Sigenergy, which are really exciting, and how they tie up with their HV, high voltage battery range. It's a little bit different to the approach that they've had so far. So we've got some content coming on that and the string inverters as well. So we've had a few actually replacements. If you can see that there, they're an old Sunny Boy that's come out of an installation, and we've swapped in the string inverters that Sigenergy can now offer as well, which is a new part of their range. They're trying to cover off bases that they didn't have sorted before. And we can bring some more of that to the channel. We're still fitting this stuff. We still really like it. It is just the timings thing with the announcement of new products and consumers waiting for them. Anyway, that's another Sigenergy system ticked off the list, 2 8 kilowatt hour batteries and the 6 kilowatt inverter with no gateway, but still showing all of the existing generation in the app. And we've got some of the more complex systems that we usually share on the channel coming soon. We're absolutely snowed under with the Sigenergy installations. We've got one where we're taking the main supply from the consumer's house, nearly 20 meters down their garden, where we're going to be installing the gateway, a huge stack of batteries and a 12 kilowatt inverter in a garage with solar PV on the garage and sending all of that power back to the house. There's some really, really interesting ones that we're looking forward to sharing with you guys and girls watching along. I do try and make these videos that are useful for us in marketing the business and drawing consumers towards us. And YouTube has been incredible for that. We've seen so many people getting in touch, asking us to work in all parts of the UK because they want us to come and do that for them. That is really nice for us, and it obviously benefits the business and us employing further people within the company as we maybe grow, but also trying to share some of the stuff I know, having been at this now 25, 30 years. I know my youthful exterior doesn't show that. God, even I know that's a lie when I said it. You know, it's sharing that stuff. For those of you who maybe seen the Apprentice 1-to-1 things that I'm up to alongside industry and some of the other stuff that I like to get involved with, it's a passion of mine. Helping other people to have rewarding long-term careers in the electrical sector is something that I'm really passionate about. And in sharing the things I do and don't know through the course of this content to help other people is something that I also enjoy doing. So that's why there's a bit of a hybrid approach on this channel, when sometimes we might be talking to consumers and other times installers, and it can put people off from both of those camps when we go down those rabbit holes. But I hope you can appreciate I am just trying to serve those two things alongside each other as best I can, in the hope it helps other people. There's an abundance of work out there, so I don't feel competition from other electricians, installers coming into the sector wanting to do similar work to what we do. It really is to just try and help support and encourage them based on what I have and haven't learned. So yeah, that's the end of that video. If you've got any comments, as always, please do drop them in as normal. I do really like the interaction that comes alongside the channel, and I do try and reply to every single person who takes the time to comment on the videos. And otherwise, we'll see you on the next one soon.